The first sign that something had changed on the battlefield wasn't an explosion or a missile strike. It was silence. Russian assault teams advanced toward Ukrainian lines, expecting resistance from hidden infantry, only to find metal shapes moving through the smoke, rolling forward without hesitation, without fear, and without fatigue. What they were facing wasn't a new battalion of soldiers. It was something colder, faster, and far less predictable. For years, military analysts have warned that future wars would be dominated not by human fighters, but by machines. Entire formations of drones and unmanned systems would replace frontline troops, pushing human operators further from the danger zone. In Ukraine, that prediction is no longer theoretical. Along multiple sectors of the front line, Russian units have rushed forward expecting conventional defenses, only to meet enemies made from steel instead of flesh and bone. Ukraine's growing army of robotic ground vehicles is turning science fiction into battlefield reality. The idea of robotic warfare might sound modern, but the roots of this concept stretch back more than a century. In 1915, France experimented with explosive robotic drone prototypes, deploying around 20 units with the Second French Army. 2 decades later, the Soviet Union introduced the teletank, a remotely operated armored vehicle equipped with a machine gun. These early uncrewed ground vehicles saw limited deployment during the Winter War against Finland, and again in the early stages of the German-Soviet conflict in 1941. Around that same era, the United Kingdom worked on its own radio-controlled infantry tank, codenamed the Black Prince. Across decades of military experimentation, countries repeatedly explored the dream of armored vehicles that could fight without a human crew on board. But for most of history, the concept stalled. The machines were expensive, complicated, and often unreliable. Nations found it easier to invest in traditional tanks and armored carriers instead of experimental robots that struggled to justify their cost. That barrier is finally breaking. Advances in modern technology have made mass production of robotic vehicles far more feasible, and Ukraine has emerged as one of the leading innovators in this space. At the start of the war, Ukraine had only a handful of uncrewed ground vehicles, locally referred to as ground robotic complexes. Many early models were imported, and their roles were limited. Yet Ukrainian military planners quickly recognized their potential. Domestic development programs were accelerated, and within a few years the country shifted toward producing nearly all of its own robotic systems. According to a Jamestown report, roughly 99% of armored robots used by Ukrainian forces are now domestically produced. The scale of growth has been dramatic. In 2024, Ukraine possessed only a few hundred robotic ground vehicles. By 2025, the production target jumped to 15,000 units. Plans for 2026 raised that number even higher, reaching 20,000. And the expansion hasn't been limited to quantity alone. Where early deployments relied on just a handful of designs, Ukraine now fields more than 200 different models built by roughly 40 manufacturers. Each variant fills a specific role, from surveillance and scouting to defensive fortification and direct fire support. This growing diversity gives Ukrainian commanders a wider set of tactical options. Some robots specialize in holding defensive lines, while others are built for reconnaissance missions or precision strikes. The more varied the robotic fleet becomes, the more Ukraine can rely on machines to handle dangerous tasks that would otherwise cost human lives. Preserving manpower has become a central objective, allowing soldiers to be redirected toward larger operations still unfolding across the front. The rapid rise of Ukraine's robot army didn't happen by accident. One key reason is urgency. Ukraine is fighting an evolving war where delays can cost territory or lives. Unlike countries that can spend years refining new weapons, Ukrainian developers operate under constant pressure to deliver results quickly. The same fast-paced innovation has already been seen in the country's drone industry and in accelerated development of missiles and air defense systems. Some designs arrive on the battlefield before they are perfectly refined, but many prove effective precisely because they reach soldiers when they are needed most. Another factor is cooperation between engineers and frontline troops. In many militaries, there is a clear divide between defense contractors and the soldiers who use their equipment. Ukraine has bridged that gap. Soldiers communicate directly with manufacturers, providing feedback from real combat conditions. Designers adjust their products based on what actually works under fire, not what looks impressive in testing environments. Robotics contractor Tencor describes this process as operating in wartime R&D mode, where decisions that might take months elsewhere happen within days, driven by frontline needs. The third advantage is surprisingly simple. Robots are easier and cheaper to build than traditional armored vehicles. Without crew compartments or life support systems, robotic platforms can remain compact. Many Ukrainian designs are no larger than shopping carts or small golf buggies, assembled using commercial components combined with military-grade weapons like 7.62mm or 50 caliber machine guns. Some units cost as little as $5,000, while even the most advanced models remain far cheaper than tanks or heavy infantry vehicles. This combination of speed, cooperation, and affordability has allowed Ukraine to scale its robotic forces faster than most analysts expected. The contrast becomes even clearer when compared to the United States. Despite having the world's largest military budget, the US has struggled to field combat-ready robotic ground vehicles. Programs like the machine gun-equipped Prowler in the 1980s or the teleoperated mobile anti-armor platform never advanced beyond testing stages. Even more recent efforts, including Armed Swords robots deployed in Iraq in 2007, failed to see combat, and funding for some robotic combat vehicle initiatives has been cut due to rising costs. While other militaries debate prototypes, Ukraine's robots are already entering active combat zones. But building machines is only the beginning. The real question is whether these steel fighters can actually change the outcome of battles. And the first recorded test of that idea would soon shock observers watching from around the world. And when one specific robot rolled forward in 2024, leading an assault instead of following behind human troops, it signaled that the battlefield had crossed a line that may never be uncrossed again. The moment that changed everything didn't begin with a human charge. It began with a machine rolling forward into danger while soldiers stayed behind it. Until that point, uncrewed ground vehicles in Ukraine had mostly been used for limited roles like mine laying or one-way kamikaze strikes. But in 2024, a new video surfaced that revealed a very different future. A robot leading an assault against Russian positions, drawing enemy fire, and reshaping how ground combat could unfold. The vehicle at the center of that footage was the Lyut-2, 0UGV. Weighing roughly 660 pounds or 300 kilograms, it carried a PKT machine gun capable of accurate fire out to around 625 feet, about 800 meters. Unlike traditional vehicles that required a crew exposed to danger, the Lyut operated under remote control, protected by steel plate armor designed to absorb small arms fire. The footage showed the robot advancing steadily, ignoring the chaos around it, and forcing Russian defenders to react to a target that couldn't feel fear or hesitation. What made the scene remarkable wasn't just the robot's presence, it was how it changed the tactical flow of the battle. Instead of soldiers being the first to draw fire, the Lyut-2 moved ahead, attracting attention, while human troops remained safer behind the line. At one point in the video, the robot rolled directly over anti-tank mines that failed to detonate, highlighting both the unpredictability of the battlefield and the durability of the platform. Russian troops attempted to stop it with rocket-propelled grenades, yet the machine remained operational despite multiple close calls. As the robot pressed forward, the psychological effect became just as important as its firepower. By the end of the footage, Russian soldiers were seen abandoning their trenches and retreating, faced with a weapon that didn't tire or retreat under pressure. The scene looked almost unreal, like something lifted from a science fiction film, but it represented a real shift in how battles could be fought. That first assault wasn't an isolated experiment. Over the following months, Ukraine began integrating robotic ground vehicles into more complex missions. In July 2025, a historic operation demonstrated just how far the concept had evolved. Ukraine's 3rd Brigade carried out a mission in the Kharkiv region, using only drones and robotic vehicles, without placing human soldiers directly into the assault force. According to official statements released afterward, kamikaze drones and ground robots were used to destroy a series of Russian bunkers. As the robotic force continued its advance, the remaining Russian troops inside a damaged fortification faced a stark choice. With no visible human attackers nearby, the defenders realized their position was untenable. They emerged from cover with their hands raised, surrendering to machines rather than soldiers. Drones then escorted the captured troops out of the combat zone, where they were taken into Ukrainian custody. It marked the first widely documented instance of robots and drones completing an entire mission independently, while avoiding casualties among Ukrainian personnel. The implications were significant. For the first time, a robotic assault force achieved a concrete objective, neutralizing enemy defenses and capturing prisoners without direct human presence at the front line. That single operation demonstrated how unmanned systems could reduce risk while maintaining pressure on enemy positions. It also showed that robots were no longer just tools supporting soldiers. They were becoming frontline actors, shaping the outcome of engagements. Later that same year, another video revealed how Ukrainian forces were experimenting with robots even during testing scenarios. In November 2025, footage emerged showing a UGV firing on a Russian MTLB personnel carrier. Reports indicated that Ukrainian troops had been testing the robot near the forward line when it encountered the vehicle unexpectedly. Rather than disengage, operators seized the opportunity to observe how the system performed in real combat conditions. The robot opened fire, and the Russians appeared caught completely off guard by an attacker that lacked the usual signatures of a crewed vehicle. Each of these incidents added to a growing pattern. Ukrainian robotic platforms were transitioning from experimental assets into reliable combat tools capable of offensive and defensive roles. Soldiers operating these systems had to adapt quickly, learning new tactics and discovering how to integrate machines into operations that had traditionally depended on human presence. The learning curve was steep, but the results were increasingly difficult to ignore. Behind every successful deployment was a process of constant adjustment. Operators analyzed footage, studied enemy reactions, and refined how robots were positioned on the battlefield. Some missions revealed weaknesses. Others demonstrated unexpected strengths. The more the robots were used, the more Ukrainian units understood how to exploit their endurance and precision. But while these early successes captured attention, they were only the beginning. The true test of Ukraine's robotic strategy would come not during short assaults or isolated encounters, but in prolonged defensive operations where machines would be expected to hold the line for days or even weeks without a single human standing beside them. And when one specific robot was ordered to defend a frontline position alone, the results would push the limits of what military planners thought unmanned systems were capable of. Holding ground has always been one of the hardest tasks in warfare. Offensive strikes can be quick and decisive, but defense demands endurance, patience, and constant vigilance. For human soldiers, that often means long hours under threat, exposed to fatigue and risk. Ukraine's next robotic experiment aimed to test whether a machine could handle that burden alone, not for minutes or hours, but for weeks. In December 2025, new footage and statements from Ukrainian units revealed a remarkable operation involving the droid TW-12-7, an uncrewed ground robot built by the defense company DevDroid. Unlike earlier robotic missions focused on short assaults, this one placed the machine in a contested frontline sector with a clear objective: hold the position and suppress enemy advances without exposing Ukrainian personnel to direct danger. Equipped with a Piknak 50 caliber machine gun, the droid TW-12-7 established itself in a defensive position where Russian forces frequently attempted to push forward. Its operators controlled it remotely from a safe shelter behind the line of engagement, using advanced radio systems to guide its actions. According to a detailed telegram statement released by Ukraine's 3rd Army Corps, the robot remained on combat duty for an astonishing 45 days straight. During that time, it continuously fired on enemy movements, preventing infiltration attempts and keeping the defensive line intact. The significance of that mission went beyond a single machine gun platform. It demonstrated that robotic ground systems could maintain long-term pressure on an enemy without exposing human soldiers to sniper fire, artillery, or close-range assaults. Operators described how the robots suppressed repeated advances, forcing Russian troops to hesitate before approaching an area guarded by something that never needed rest or rotation. Technically, the droid TW-12-7 represented a major step forward in Ukrainian robotics. It had an operational range of up to 15 miles and relied on advanced radio controls combined with AI-assisted navigation. These automated systems helped the robot maintain stability and track targets while its operators managed firing decisions. The platform's ability to function in harsh conditions made it one of DevDroid's most celebrated designs and a central example of how robotic technology was reshaping frontline defense. The results of the 45-day deployment were clear. Ukrainian positions held firm, and the unit reported zero manpower losses during the mission. That outcome reinforced a growing belief among Ukrainian planners that robots could fill roles traditionally reserved for entrenched infantry. Instead of risking soldiers in exposed positions, machines could now absorb the pressure, buying time and space for larger strategic operations. Not long after that defensive milestone, another video surfaced, this time showing a droid TW-12-7 actively engaging Russian infantry in January 2026. Armed with an M2 Browning machine gun, the robot tracked enemy movements and delivered sustained fire despite incoming small arms attacks. Observers described it as the first recorded instance of a robot directly engaging hostile troops in combat. The footage revealed how the system locked onto targets and maintained accuracy, illustrating a level of battlefield presence that few had imagined possible only a few years earlier. The psychological impact of these engagements was difficult to ignore. Facing a machine that neither hesitated nor retreated under fire created a different kind of pressure on opposing forces. Unlike human defenders, the robot showed no visible signs of stress or fatigue. It simply tracked, fired, and maintained its position, forcing attackers to reconsider how they approached fortified sectors. Later that same month, DevDroid's technology was involved in another high-profile incident in the Lyman direction of the Donetsk region. A reconnaissance strike robot, the droid TW-7-62, operated under the command of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade. Equipped with a KT-7-62 PKT machine gun and a built-in ballistic calculator, the system was designed to deliver precise fire while maintaining remote operation. During the mission, the robot confronted 3 Russian soldiers hiding among damaged structures. Video footage showed the soldiers eventually emerging with their hands raised, signaling surrender. The robot's presence, combined with its ability to track targets and maintain pressure, forced the defenders to make a decision without direct contact from Ukrainian troops. According to DevDroid's report, the system included artificial intelligence elements capable of autonomous detection and target tracking, enhancing its effectiveness in complex environments. These incidents highlighted how Ukraine's robotic systems were evolving beyond simple remote-controlled platforms into more advanced tools capable of independent battlefield tasks. Each successful deployment added new lessons, shaping how operators integrated machines into both offensive and defensive strategies. The growing number of recorded engagements suggested that robotic ground vehicles were no longer experimental. They were becoming a consistent feature of modern combat. Yet even as these machines proved their value, the next stage of development was already underway. Ukrainian robotics companies were pushing toward more powerful platforms, equipped with heavier weapons and extended ranges. The question was no longer whether robots could fight. It was how far their capabilities could expand, and what would happen when the next generation rolled onto the battlefield, carrying weapons far more destructive than anything seen before. Because the next robotic system being prepared wasn't just an upgrade, it hinted at a future where armored robots might deliver firepower once reserved only for tanks. The evolution of Ukraine's robotic forces has moved faster than most military planners ever expected. What began as small experimental platforms is now expanding into something far more ambitious. Machines designed not just to assist soldiers, but to deliver battlefield firepower once reserved for heavy armored vehicles. And the next generation of robotic systems shows just how quickly this transformation is accelerating. Ukrainian robotics companies, including DevDroid, are already working on platforms that go beyond machine gun-equipped ground vehicles. One of the most notable developments is a new robotic combat system fitted with a 30mm cannon. Unlike earlier compact designs, this platform will require a larger and heavier chassis to handle the recoil of such a powerful weapon. The shift toward heavier armament signals a major change in how uncrewed ground vehicles may be used, not only for reconnaissance or defensive suppression, but also for direct fire support during offensive maneuvers. According to available details, this new system is expected to operate effectively at ranges of up to 3 miles, or roughly 5 kilometers. That extended reach could allow operators to engage enemy targets from safer distances while maintaining the precision and persistence that robotic platforms have already demonstrated. The design suggests that future robots could accompany infantry formations in high-threat environments, providing covering fire without exposing human crews to the same level of risk faced by traditional armored vehicles. This development is only one example of a much broader trend. Across Ukraine's growing robotics sector, multiple companies are pushing forward with new designs that aim to be stronger, tougher, and increasingly advanced. The same wartime innovation cycle that fueled rapid growth in drones and missiles is now driving robotic ground systems. Engineers continue to experiment with improved navigation systems, stronger armor, and more powerful weapon integrations, all while maintaining the affordability that has made these machines practical to produce at scale. The strategic implications extend beyond the current battlefield. As Ukraine's robots become more capable, they are also setting a new benchmark for military innovation worldwide. Other countries are watching closely, studying how relatively low-cost platforms have been used to defend positions, carry out assaults, and even capture enemy soldiers. Once the war eventually ends, Ukrainian robotics companies could attract significant international interest from militaries looking to acquire similar systems or adapt the technology for their own forces. For now, however, the immediate focus remains on the front lines. As more robotic units are deployed across regions like Donetsk and Luhansk, Ukraine's military gains an additional layer of resilience. Machines can hold dangerous positions, draw enemy fire, and execute missions that would otherwise expose soldiers to extreme risk. The growing presence of robots also places increasing pressure on Russian forces, which must now confront opponents that do not bleed, tire, or hesitate under sustained fire. The rise of robotic warfare in Ukraine reflects a broader shift in modern conflict. Instead of relying solely on traditional armored formations, commanders are blending drones, ground robots, and remote-operated systems into coordinated operations. This approach not only reduces casualties, but also forces adversaries to adapt to an evolving battlefield where threats may arrive from unexpected directions and without warning. Looking ahead, Ukraine's commitment to expanding its robotic army suggests that these machines will play an even larger role in shaping future engagements. As new models roll out with heavier weapons, improved autonomy, and extended operational ranges, the line between science fiction and reality continues to blur. What began as an experiment born from necessity has turned into a defining feature of the war and a preview of how future conflicts may be fought. Because the real story isn't just about robots replacing soldiers. It's about how technology is rewriting the rules of engagement, turning once impossible missions into routine operations, and reshaping the balance of power on the battlefield. And if the pace of innovation continues, the machines rolling across Ukraine's front lines today may only be the beginning of a much larger transformation in modern warfare. Subscribe for more military insights, tech breakdowns, and updates.